Richard Cripwell, I'm the Lieutenant Governor of the Bailiwick of Guernsey.
Your Excellency, what is it about the homecoming that makes it so special?
I think that there's several reasons why this day is so special to Alderney, and it should be to others as well. Firstly, it's simply a celebration, an anniversary of an island returning to its home that it had left 5 years earlier in the most trying and difficult of circumstances. But I also think it's a celebration of the grit and the determination and the can-do attitude of people who had lost absolutely everything and who came back and didn't simply make a life, but recreated a society and laid the foundations for the island that we have today.
The history of Alderney has been uneventful, and in 1939 it was uneventful still. True, war was looming, but the young men were ready, certainly, to venture their lives in their sovereign's cause, as their fathers had done before them. And there was no reason to suppose that the island itself would be disturbed, still less that its quiet landscape would become a vortex of cruelty and destruction. At the outbreak of war in the September of that fateful year, Alderney was quiet and pastoral, awaiting, like all the world, the unknown future. As gradually in twos and threes the people began to slip away, there was some sadness and anxiety. But as month after month went by, and nothing happened as dark winter gave place to a spring of false serenity, there became a sense of remoteness, of unreality. No one could tell how savagely, nor how instantly, reality would strike. On June the 14th, Paris fell, and the German panzers fanning out thrust swiftly across Normandy and Brittany towards the ports of Cherbourg and Saint-Malo. On Wednesday, June the 19th, the Germans were seen making their way down the Cotentin Peninsula from Cherbourg. A hastily drafted telegram sending a warning to Trinity House and asking for instruction about the lighthouses was refused transmission due to radio silence. It was dispatched despite this, and later the same day a reply was received saying that the ship Vestal was on her way. A notice dated the 22nd of June 1940 and signed by Judge George French was posted 8 days before the Channel Islands were occupied by the Germans. It read, "I have appealed to Admiralty for a ship to evacuate us. If the ship does not come, it means we are considered safe. If the ship comes, time will be limited. You are advised to pack 1 suitcase for each person so as to be ready. All possible notice will be given." The ship arrived, and Alderney's evacuation began the following day, Sunday the 23rd of June 1940. On the 8th of May 1945, VE Day, Germany unconditionally surrendered, and after 5 long years, the liberation of the Channel Islands from their occupation could finally begin. British forces arrived in St. Peter Port Harbour on May the 9th, 1945. Shortly afterward, another contingent landed in St. Helier to accept the formal surrender of the German garrison. Operation Nest Egg had begun. But the liberation of Alderney occurred later due to its unique circumstances. The British forces arrived here on the 16th of May 1945. Due to the heavy fortifications, the island's transition back to British control required more logistical planning. But then, little over 6 months later, at 10:30 on that dry but wintry morning of Sunday the 2nd of December 1945, the launch, Guillemot, splashed its way around the Alderney breakwater, bringing home after 5.5 years of absence the vanguard of the returning exiles. Later that Sunday afternoon, Advent Sunday, marking the beginning of the Christian year, an army chaplain held a service in the parish church. There were only 2 church bells left, slung from the wooden cross trees in the graveyard, and they made a doleful sound. The rest had been shipped by the Germans to the continent to be melted down, but they were afterwards found at Cherbourg and brought back. As the tiny congregation filed into the church, night was already falling. The footsteps made an uncertain clatter in the great, bare, echoing building. A hole gaped in the roof, and it was cold and damp. They huddled greatly together in the dim light of a single candle flickering on a temporary altar. It had been decided all would stay at the Bellevue until they could furnish their own homes. The night was bitterly cold with no fires, but hot water bottles were provided for the ladies. Thus ended their first desolate day. The next morning, the Lieutenant Governor flew over from Guernsey to check on them, and with much to do, spirits slightly improved in the daylight. Just under 2 weeks later, the Guernsey Evening Press reported that at 8 o'clock on the morning of Saturday, December the 15th, 1945, as reddened sunrise streaked through a leaden overcast sky, there steamed into Alderney Harbour the Southern Railway ship Autocarrier, laden with the most precious cargo of 110 Alderney exiles. As the first ship steamed round the head of the breakwater, it was greeted by a brilliant display of very lights, the hooters, and the strains of No Place Like Home from John McCarthy on his cornet. Streamers of flags and bunting fluttered in the wind, and most prominent to the passengers was the most massive Welcome Home sign ever seen. As the ship drew alongside, everyone stood to attention while the national anthem was played. Quickly following this came a salute of 21 rounds from the guns of the all-conquering, liberating British troops. Upon their return, Alderney's evacuees found their island transformed by war. Houses were damaged or destroyed, possessions stolen or burnt for fuel, and the island's infrastructure had been drastically altered. There was no street lighting, there were no covers in the drains, so it was dangerous to go out after dark. When Mr. and Mrs. Tom Herivelle moved into their house in the Bourgeois, one of the only buildings fit for purpose, they lived in 2 rooms, one large and one small. There was a light in the small one and a stove in the large one, so they had to take their choice. There are so many more tales of the resilience of those who first returned contained in this small but powerful book. If you have not yet read the Alderney Story, I urge you to find time. It is nothing short of a testament of courage, resilience, and true faith.